Do you hear it? Between the static. Listen closely. A story. One that no man nor beast nor other should hear. But it's there. You just have to grasp it. Make it yours. Have it mold your being and shape your future. Listen to the tales from the white noise.
No, it gets me every time. Like, seriously, it just feels like some overly enthusiastic guy trying to imitate Tales of the Crypt.
Or the Twilight Zone. You're entering another world with a big scary monster or something.
Oh no, it was straight up veering into spooky, scary skeletons territory. Like, seriously. Right, okay. Start off with, hi, I'm Tulleth, the, I don't know, discoverer? Nah, that makes me sound like Francis Drake.
Radio enthusiast?
Yeah, no, let's go with that. I'm a nerd who loves scanning frequencies for anything and everything. Got into this kind of thing from Fallout 3 when I was a little kid. When you'd be wandering around the place and ping, you find a new radio station, or even better, you'd actually fix the radio towers and it would play a number station from the Chinese spies, and they had these bases all over the games. Ever since then, I've kind of always had this weird obsession about finding one of these stations in real life.
And lo and behold, you actually did.
And it's pretty interesting too, as well. Now, this is Adam.
Your handsome roommate, producer, and editor for this podcast. I'll make sure you don't have to listen to too much of his nonsensical babbling, which if you think is bad now, you missed out on the 2-hour rant he went on just before he started the recording.
You're not keeping that in?
Fuck no. I am, however, keeping a copy of it, if I ever need to have you sectioned.
I was not that bad.
Mark the recording there. I'll splice in some of it to let them decide.
But what happens if it is legit, though?
Then I can make you a nice little tinfoil hat so the communists stop stealing your thoughts.
Oh, come on. It's not entirely unreasonable to believe that there's a modicum of truth to these stories, even if they are over-embellished.
You're trying to tell me a Wendigo existed? In the trenches?
I've heard strange war stories. Remember that one I showed you of a truck being led through a minefield by a sergeant who then later turned out to have died 10 hours prior?
A man living a day at a time with increasing jumps in time between those days.
Amnesia exists.
A dog becoming a weird monster.
I can give a few for that, psychosis being one.
Rich coming from you, honestly.
Fine, but yeah, I've always had an obsession over finding these sorts of stations. I've got a kit, and it's an old ham radio rigged up to scan through many frequencies as possible. Won't go too in-depth with it, but it ignores commonly used ones like radio stations or air traffic control. Obviously, it's not perfect, and 99% of what I find is useless. Adam, shut the fuck up with your face. But yeah, pilots chatting to each other. Some teenagers pirate radio station to play as homebrewed EDM, trucker ham radios, which actually, to be fair, is quite interesting at times.
Talking about truckers, has Echo Driver 11 fully recovered yet?
Last thing I heard, Snowflake was visiting him in hospital some point this week. Fucking back to the point. But yeah, about a month ago, found today's episode of Tales from the White Noise. When you listen to it, you'll understand why I wanted to show it off.
And that's why he's pulled me into this. As good as he is at dismantling my broken clock radios and leaving bits around the flat, he has no clue on how to show it to people in any other way than dragging them into our flat and looking like a lunatic. So I use my wonderful abilities of knowing how tech past 1950 works to bring this to you. And my skills as an editor to prevent my roommate from being taken away by men in white coats. Mark it again.
The cordyceps fungus exists. What happens if it's a weird variant that gave the guy hallucinations and also infected his pet?
That's the plotline to the fucking Last of Us.
So as I said, I do most of the actual work by creating the RSS feeds, editing, uploading, all that.
And the two of us will be your hosts for every episode to come as we find them. Today's episode we decided to call It Came from Fido.
I am sorry, David. I didn't mean to. Just come out, David. I'll soon no longer need eyes to see. Then I will be able to find you, David. Then we can be together. Entwined. One.
So, you'll do something about this, right? No, I get it. I'm not even sure there's much you can do. But I'll take anything that can help if you're offering it. So, should we start from the beginning? The quicker we get this done, the quicker you can do whatever it is you think it will be to help. Cool. So it would have started about 2 months ago. After the, accident, I became a bit of a recluse. Only really going outside at night to the corner store to grab food and walk that thing we just heard talking. He wasn't always like that. God, no. He used to be a little pug. Dio was his name. He used to do this trick. I'd start playing this music, something from JoJo, and he'd dance along to it. Guess because he could tell how happy I got from it. Then I'd pause it and say, Zawarudo, and he'd play dead. Took me a long time to teach him that. Sorry, I'm wasting time. It was night. We were on our way from the store and just cutting through the edge of the park to let him do his business and such. I was pretty tired. Sleeping during the day is hard. It's like the body knows it's wrong. Doesn't help that I was running low on weed and my dealer was out of town. But as we were walking, I swear I kept on seeing something rustle in the bushes. I thought to myself that it was probably a rat or a fox, but something in me just said it wasn't. A strong gut feeling. Like how you can feel a thunderstorm brewing before it starts. Like some horrible sense of deja vu. And I was right. I saw it. I was convinced I was having a breakdown or a stroke, or it was just a trick of the shadows. Long, spindly legs, too many to count. A small, bulbous body covered with eyes. Hundreds of eyes. All looking like they came from different animals. And collected like sores or warts. With eyes even growing over other eyes. It jumped at Dio. Right for his face. The screeches and yelps that Dio made kept me up for a week. Just remembering them. And the blood. Christ, the blood. I kicked the thing away, grabbed Dio, and ran. He was bleeding so much. My clothes were soaked, and there was a long trail of red following me to the vet's. Luckily, the vet by me has 24-hour emergency services. I booted open the door, screaming and damp with red. Near gave the guy at the desk a fucking heart attack. I was drenched in it. More blood than a 25-pound dog could possibly have in its body. Christ, the vet was panicking in case I was injured. Once I convinced him it was just Dio, he ran, dragged out his assistant, and both of them took Dio into surgery. I waited in the hall for hours. Every now and again, one would run out and wheel a trolley in, usually with a comatose dog. most likely a blood donor, occasionally with tools and medicine. The two of them worked tirelessly through the night. I was panicking. I threw up in my bedroom, crying at the same time. I shook and screamed. I don't know if it was shock, worry, both, but I was a mess. Dio was all I had, and he was dying just feet away from me, and I could do nothing to stop it. I didn't know what I'd do without Dio. After all that happened in my life, the accident, losing my job to a buyout, losing my fiancé, losing my friends, Dio was the only constant, my only solace, my only friend. If I had lost him, I'd have nothing. I don't know when I passed out, either between frantic panic episodes or between the vomiting. But I awoke to the doctor shaking me gently. He looked wrecked. He looked nervous. He was doing his best to hide it, being professional as all hell, but you can't hide that. Dio is stable and looking to make a full recovery, minus the eye, of course, the doctor said. I don't know if he knew, but how he said that disturbs me to this day. His emphasis on full, his slight half-smile, totally betraying how he was just before. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but he felt off when he said that. Almost like whatever infected Dio infected him too. I asked if I could see Dio. He smiled softly and brought me to the recovery room. As I walked in, I fell to my knees. My poor dog. Countless tubes hooked into him, surrounded by bloody rags. No sound but those uncaring beeps of machinery. I wanted to hold Dio, be there for him, but I knew I couldn't, in case I upset a tube and made things worse. If they could get worse. I asked when I could take him home. They told me a week or so, but I could visit every night if I wanted. They ordered me a cab home, and when I got in, I tried to cook something. I couldn't, though. It felt unearned. Like just eating was a betrayal with Dio, not there to be with me when I did. I even looked down out of instinct where I'd usually see him pleading. That always hungry face looking up at me. Sleep wasn't much better either. Night terrors, panic episodes, psychosis from lack of sleep. It was torture. Just no matter what, I couldn't find rest. Eventually, my dealer gave me the number of a guy who could get me some script diazepam. Kept me stable, even if I was just a bit loopy. It took 5 days before Dio awoke. I visited him every day, just to see him. Relieved to see him at least still breathing. On the 5th, he was groggy slow, but looked like he had put on some weight. I asked the doctor, and he just made that weird half-smile again and said, water weight from the IV. Looking back on it now, he knew what Dio would become. He was like a proud parent, witnessing their child go through some rite of passage. Maturing, transforming. The sick fuck. On the 6th day, he was fully awake, bouncing around like his old self, even with only one eye. By then, though, my medication was clouding my senses. Looking back, I must not have noticed the first signs of change. I remember carrying him home. He felt so heavy. I shrugged it off down to the diazepam, making me weak as hell. But he was definitely bigger. Enough I should have noticed. The next days were as normal. Work, walks, and video games. The monotonous routine that was my life. I was about to even stop taking the diazepam before the first instance happened. It was a Saturday evening. I had just finished work for the day. I was playing some Mortal Kombat then. All of a sudden I hear this croaky, high-pitched fatality. I was pretty out of it, but it still unnerved me. I searched the room, panicking in case I had imagined the noise. My eyes fell upon Dio. Immediately, I was calm. I guess Dio was a parrot now. I should have done something there. If I did, maybe this all wouldn't be happening. No, I know, but it's like taking care of a child that shows all the telltale signs, then acting surprised when they turn out to be a psychopath. I feel like I fucked up as a person by not seeing the signs. No, I know, but my own thoughts make me think I'm partially responsible at least. Fatality, he said again. I jumped from my seat and panicked. I thought I was going through an episode again, or maybe the drugs were messing with my perception. I backed away from Dio, and he looked worried. Not like how a dog would normally look worried. His eye, it looked too expressive. Like, I understand dogs can tell your mood, but this was more human than how a dog should be acting. He advanced slowly towards me, and I stepped back at the same pace. I wasn't long before I was backed up against the fridge. Fear. He said, fear. He understood what was wrong. He didn't just react to my body language. He understood the situation. Dio backed off from me, moving away to give me space from him. I don't know if he was malicious back then. It was more like a child realizing something was up and trying to fix it. But I can't help but believe that he knew he was still in his formative stages, pupil phase, whatever. He needed protection as he developed. He avoided me for the next few days. I would put out food for him. He was so ravenously hungry. He would wait for me to move from the food before making his way over and just inhale it. I started giving him more and more. By the fourth day, he was eating nearly 5 times as much as he was before, and was always asking for more. Food, he would ask. I could not feed him. He was still my Dio, my best friend, somewhere in there. And by this point, I was at my wit's end. I had been doubling up my dosage. I would have spells where I'd forget what Dio had become, but I still loved him. I had to care for him, otherwise what would I have left? So I kept caring for him. I took him off the dog food, and I was spending all my money on more and more food. Meat and calorie-dense items. But he just kept asking for more. By this point, he could speak in full sentences, conveying his thoughts thoroughly. He wanted food, or more specifically, meat. And he wanted to go out into the world. As gone as I was, I couldn't let him do it. I couldn't let him out. By now, he had changed. He had grown to about 3 foot off the ground on all 8 legs. He was about 6 foot long and would loom over me as he stood up. He had grown long, stick-thin arms with hands with 6 fingers, each with 4 knuckles on every hideously long finger. He would have been hunted down on sight. I would have been hunted down on sight if I ever let him out. But we needed food. We desperately needed food. He had gone through everything I had. All my frozen and canned stuff even. I had to go out. It took some convincing, but eventually he agreed. Saw a reason that people wouldn't understand his form. Not yet, but they will when I am complete. That's all he said before moving back through the living room and sat down to watch TV. Mostly political news stations. So I took some money from my safe. Never really trusted banks myself. Only kept enough to pay the bills in the account. I took 100, maybe 150, and made my way to the store. I should have been calm. Relieved to be away from Dio, but when I wasn't, I was more anxious than I had ever been before. I wasn't watching him. I wasn't making sure no one saw him. I constantly thought about turning back and staying with him, but if I came back without food, at this point I wasn't sure what Dio was capable of. I got to the store and just began loading up my cart as much as possible. Frozen meat, fatty snacks, gallons of soda, mountains of cheeses, and dried pasta. By the end, I was pushing 2 towering carts along. The woman at the checkout looked worried. I was unwashed, unkempt. By this point, I'd already lost about 15 pounds or something. She asked if I was planning a party, and I lied, saying yes. My dog just recovered from surgery. The woman looked at me, horrified that I must have been worried sick. Hence why I looked like how I did. I told her I was still worried, that I thought I would wake up from this sick dream at any moment. I made a misstep. I used to do them in conversations before seeking help. I give out too much information. Too many emotions flew out. You can always see it in their faces. That you no longer become an adult to them, but more like a sad child. That's the nice ones, that is. The meaner ones simply tell you to get over it. As if it could be waved away just like that. She was the latter, telling me I shouldn't think like that. I simply smiled and just said I was a nervous soul, that I just cared too much for my pet. Because of personal issues he helped me with. She simply smiled politely and asked me small talk questions. What kind of dog, what his name was, etc. Enough discussion to keep us distracted from my small outburst. I then paid for my shopping and heaved my laden shopping carts out the store and 50-odd meters down the road to my flat. Loading up all my shopping into the elevator, I rode the cramped ride up to the 12th floor. After unloading all the stuff, I went to unlock my door, where I froze. I thought I was going to be sick. I didn't know if I should run or burn down the whole fucking building, including myself. In the door lock was my landlord's key. The door was ajar, barely cracked open. I could see a shoe laying out in front of the opening. It was soaked in a puddle of dark red. Stupidly, I went in. He was eating Stephen, my landlord. Stephen was old and almost blind. Dio back then was still clumsy, still getting used to his body. A younger man or a man with better eyesight could have ran. But no. Dio managed to get a weak, old man. A weak old man who was the kindest man I'd ever met. Who never once deserved anything like this. He turned to me and looked at me. All 9 eyes with a 10th opening newly as he spoke. I was so hungry, David. You were gone for so long, I didn't know if you were coming back for me or not. I had to, David. I thought I was gonna starve. Don't be mad at me. I should have fucking killed him when I had the chance. Right there, I could have beaten him alive. Right there, I could have beaten him. He was slow, clumsy, and I was riding high on adrenaline. I wouldn't have walked away, but neither would he. But no. Fear took over. I simply remained quiet and moved the shopping inside and closed the door behind me. The next few days were hell. Dio had wrapped up what remained of Stephen in this fleshy cocoon. It stank like rot and mold. I asked Dio why he was keeping it. He simply smiled a toothy grin, with fangs piercing through newly made slits and miniature mouths up the dies of his head.
For the rest of us, David.
Over the next few days, the cocoon slowly started to twitch and writhe. More and more with each hour I watched as I prepared meal after meal after meal. It was hell. Constantly waiting for something to happen and it never does. That dread, knowing you're gonna die at any point and you can't do anything to escape it. Leaving? No. No, the only way I could leave was out the window. Or in my bath after a very close shave. He can stop that, you know. Stop you from ending it. I tried a few times. The first was after the incident with Stephen. At first, I thought I dreamt it all. Woke up completely fine in bed after slashing my wrists in the bathroom. They weren't shallow as well. I wanted to make sure. I woke up. No scars, no wounds. He gave up part of himself to keep me alive. Part of him is me now. Or he gave up part of himself to get me to fix myself. He needs me. Or just wants me. He needs me as much as I need him. What? Sorry. You're right. It's just... part of me still thinks I can help him. I know that got me where I am, but I could still try and help. Still try and fix him. Get back my Dio. You're right. He's gone. And I can't change that. Sorry, where was I? So after 10 days, I was informed we were to have guests. Dio had never left the apartment. Only spent time at night looking out the window, responding to nothing. Not even food. He told me to prepare a feast, use all the food we had left, and to order more. I stupidly told him if I do that, I won't have any money for rent this month. He just laughed. I spent hours making trays upon trays of meat and fat. By this point, I gave up on cooking. Just cut the slabs, coat them in sugar, slather with butter. His hunger meant he needed energy. No longer cared about taste. I had no appetite. I was content in fading away. He stopped that as well. I haven't eaten in months. I have, however, gained weight since Dio turned. The first to arrive was just a man in a heavy coat. It wasn't the height of summer, but it definitely wasn't too cold out. Not enough to warrant wearing something like that. He simply smiled weakly and sat down quietly. He asked for nothing, only occasionally wincing in pain. He just grimly chuckled whenever I asked if he was okay. Next was this tiny woman, and out from her pocket crawled this fleshy centipede from under her shirt, coated in so many eyes. It was only a few inches wide, but how her baggy clothing writhed. It must have been tens of feet long. As they entered, my suspicions were correct. Out of her sleeve, the horrid beast jumped, stretching foot after foot after foot at this pile of food on the carpet, its juices soaking into the horrible stained floor. The third and final man was a lone man. At first, as he walked in, I noticed the hallway was pitch black, like an oil slick running down, the blackness moving to reveal my hallway once more, leaving a sickly yellow slime over every surface. Moving into the room, it formed into some looming black figure. It held no shape, no form, no consistency. It just was. They began eating. The other two carers and I turned to the puffer jacket wearing fourth. He had this look of pure, abject terror in his eyes. He looked as if he was going to vomit. His face went white as a sheet, shivering. No, spasming. He turned to us and asked for us not to look. Opening his jacket, we saw it. His own flesh ended around his stomach. That was where this bulbous, boil-ridden new flesh was. Strands of hair, individual eyes, small maws, and a pair of thick, pinkish-yellow tentacles reached from his stomach and grabbed the food. His carer cried as it did so. I turned away, but the others, they just watched. They were already dead inside, fully embracing the insanity. Just wanted this whole fresh hell to be over with so that they can leave. I tried speaking with them, but I didn't get much. They spoke of the monsters before us as if they were talking about the antics of their children. Oh, Mikalsh gets hungry after walks. The sun hurts him now. It's why he's so dark. Amelia's an inquisitive little soul. I caught her going through my old medical books yesterday. Just loves to read, my little bookworm. I eventually asked the question that had been burning within me. The spindly-eyed creature, the start of it all. I asked the others if they saw them. Everyone stopped when I did. The wet crunching, the labored breathing. All eyes were on me. Dio chuckled.
I wondered when you asked about the cedars.
Dio, he explained what those things were. The cedars. They come from the deep, far below the Earth's oceans, in caves that flooded as the Earth's oceans forms and the land mass shifted and split. They have hibernated for so unbelievably long. They were the first creatures to walk on land. Back before anything could breathe the thick, toxic air that Earth once had. Now they have awoken to see many things have taken their home. To see the upstarts who crawled out on their bellies out of the shores to have become the risen apes who see themselves as kings of this planet. Unable to take them home. Unable to take back their homes themselves. So they sent the cedars to mold the flesh for more appropriate stock. for the Ascension. He turned to the writhing egg-sac that was once Stephen and smiled. A horrible smile showed his hundreds of needle-thin, crooked, rotting, broken teeth. He was a proud father of a horrifying monstrosity. The feeding lasted several hours. The one who had the stomach creature eventually fell asleep and ceased his crying as the monstrosity feasted. When they had all left, I passed out from exhaustion, waking up once more in my bed. The next few days were the same routine. Prepare food, keep to myself, avoid intrusive thoughts and panic attacks. It was on the 8th day when things got worse. That evening, after having once again attempted to take my own, instead of my bed, I awoke standing up in front of that egg sac, which was spasming so wildly, like whatever was inside would tear through the wet, leathery flesh.
Look, David,
Dio said as he slithered through the room, his long, bulbous, undulating form wrapped around my small apartment several times.
they're blooming. My children.
I stood frozen in horror as I watched the sac writhe and twitch. Its erratic spasms eventually caused the skin to tear and open. Dio moved in close to me, his gargantuan head with multiple hundreds of bloodshot eyes, gaping, uneven maws impossible to ignore within this stagnant, metallic breath.
This doesn't have to frighten you, David. There is no way to make it stop.
I hesitated, asking Dio what he meant.
Let me take you, David. Let me consume you, and you can merge with my consciousness, singular, exalted, content. We can be together forever.
It was here that I'd had enough. Without thinking, I turned and ran. I leaped over him and made my way to the door. Barreling down the stairs, I looked up to see Dio funnel through the door, followed by hundreds upon hundreds of these tiny, spidery creatures with scuttling legs and a slathering choir of angry hisses.
Why do you run, David?
He screamed.
Why are you willing to die like everyone else? I am giving you a gift. You and me together.
He sounded worried when he said that, like he feared losing me. What happened next? Oh, I've spent the last few days running and hiding. I realized I wanted to live, so I've actually been trying to survive. All the while, more and more of those spiders claim more and more victims. Those that don't get infected are devoured by the monsters that are created. Dio has been hunting me closely. He can't move as fast as me, but he doesn't tire like I do. So anytime I stop to rest, he's never far behind. Do you need anything else? Good. I was thinking about how you can help. I need a bomb. Don't look at me like that. You said yourself. You aren't powerful enough to fix anything. I don't care if you can take me away from here. Without Dio, I have nothing. I have no one. I spent the last 5 years of my life shut away from everyone because of what happened to me. Using drugs to keep me sedated so I don't have to relive this anymore. The only freedom I can get now is death. Because I know wherever you take me, I'll still live that night over and over again until it finally takes me. As strong as you can muster.
And now you see why I wanted to show you all this.
Yeah, not gonna lie, I was intrigued when you showed me this one. Not as much as you are, obviously, but definitely enjoying it more than anything I've heard recently. Only thing that bugs me, and I'm doing this to cover both our arses here, is if the actual creator of this series is listening, or if anyone who knows them is, could you get in touch with us? It's just that, we don't want to steal your stuff, and we want to, in fact, share it more, which is why we're doing this. It's just, this is a really niche medium you've got here.
Yeah, please, if anyone knows anything about this, please contact us. We really want to join in on this.
So yeah, that's kind of it for this episode anyway. Tulleth, you need sleep, and I have work in like an hour, so record next couple of stuff after work.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I can feel the 4 Red Bulls wearing off now. Alright guys, see you soon.
You have been listening to Tales of the White Noise, a Nuckelavee production. Written by Tulleth and Cameron Robertson. Adam was played by Cameron Robertson. Tulleth was played by himself. This episode's short story was written by Tulleth and performed by Cameron Docker. The opening theme was composed and performed by Bryn McLernon. All sound effects and other music used are credited within the episode's description. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow us on Twitter at TFTWN for further updates on the series, and if you like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We hope to see you soon. Stay safe. Stay listening.